welcome to the ReThink podcast. We're here in, this is the second week we've talked about money.
Yep.
I mean, we're talking about stewardship. Code word for money, church code word. Stewardship. So this is a series about stewardship. When are we going to ask people to give? Isn't that why we do a stewardship series?
Not really.
Negative ghostwriter.
I feel like we kind of been asking them to give.
Everything.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for.
That's what stewardship
Up in the
about.
ante.
Well, you know that's what
Not
they're,
just-
they're
not just
waiting
money.
on. They're waiting on the
The big push.
envelopes to come out.
Well, you know, I did tell people yesterday that you're going to be doing this new class, the financial class, February 23rd.
Crown Financial.
And that you
We're
would
all invest in Bitcoin.
well, you would voluntarily look at all their finances and then tell them how much they need to be giving each week. It'd make
That's
it real
why
easy.
nobody signed up.
Everybody bring your budget.
And
Jeff's
your
going to
checkbook.
help you sort those things out. Not really, but you are doing a class February 23rd. Little promo there.
I think people, it is going to be a good class, Crown Financial. But I think people think that, though. We're doing a stewardship series with most people. They're going to ask for money.
It's been a good series. So our particular life group, we've been going through Romans still. We're not done with Romans. And so this week we're on Romans 12.
When did we finish Romans?
Long time ago.
Are you not like participating with the rest of Christ Church?
Oh, yeah, we are. So this is where the tie-in comes in.
Is this
That's what I'm
where like a cult starts?
saying. No.
Oh,
No.
all right. That's
Romans chapter 12, what's it talking about? Like offer your bodies as living sacrifices. And so the stuff that we've been talking about the last 2 weeks, like it would just prompted in exactly like what we've been saying. Also from Paul, just
But in Romans 12 also say if you have the gift of giving,
yeah, you should give.
generously.
Yeah, we talked about that last night. So, but it's also so I think this whole aspect, it's not just what we talked about. It's not just financial. Like it's your time, it's serving, it's in everything you do because it's not ours. Even life, time that we have is not ours.
But I will say too, don't fall into the trap of going, I'll give my time, but not my money.
Oh yeah, no, agreed. It's that's why it's
everything.
every aspect of your life.
Right.
Don't you think it's interesting that money is such a part of our lives? Like, no one, goes without thinking about money at some level every
Yeah.
single day.
So I was reading a Gallup poll that said they took 10,000 Americans, and they said since 2020, out of those 10,000, 77% of them admitting to having severe anxiety when it comes to their money. The data went on to say that the data went on to say that Americans are thinking more about money than they have ever thought about money.
Yep.
Did it give some
It gave,
reasons why, maybe?
number one was inflation, the price of everything continuing to rise.
Crazy.
Well, the result is that less
$6
people
dozen
are
eggs.
less people are able to retire. So there's this anxiety coming for the next generation that's about ready to offboard from the workforce. But yeah, primarily about the cost of living. How do we keep up?
Yeah, and it's not just like major items, it's every item.
Yeah.
It's so much more expensive.
But don't you think in 2020, the
World shifted.
yeah, and literally overnight, stock markets changed, economics changed, real estate changed, all these things that were secure, right, was taken away. And so, especially Americans, I think we deal with this maybe, I think everyone in the world deals with it, but we probably deal with it on a greater level because, let's be honest, America's wealthy. And we have put a lot of hope and trust into our finances and a lot of security into our finances. And so when something major happens and there's a major shift, if our hope, security, identity, purpose is taken away, like it so easily was in 2020, it leaves people with anxiety about the future because they don't know.
Which is why he says in 1 Timothy chapter 6, we've been building everything out of. Don't put your hope in this. Wealth is so uncertain. Here today, gone tomorrow.
Think about, I was thinking about like some of the places we visited when we were like in Turkey and Greece on these teaching trips, and how incredible these cities were, like just over the
Standing
top.
thousands of years from
Yeah.
yeah.
And now they're literally ruins. And there were people in there that were wealthy and doing all these things and thinking about their future. And all it took was one generation being conquered, and it was all gone. Everything they had worked for, everything their families had worked for, gone, destroyed, because it was things of this world. I think we get so narrow-minded about our right here, right now, that we forget, like, we're part of a bigger story of what God's doing across all time.
And the stuff is just so temporary.
It doesn't last.
I mean, that's really verse 7, 8, 9 of chapter 6. You know, like, we don't take anything out of this world. We come with nothing, we leave with nothing.
I love that story you shared with about John Wesley yesterday.
Isn't that intense?
It just really hit home with me yesterday. I thought that was perfect.
Well, the
Share it
amazing
again.
thing, John Wesley, English preacher, 1700s, mid to late 1700s. I mean, what is he? So maybe people don't even know. But what is he known for?
Well, starting the Wesleyan Church, but Methodist and
Yeah. So he, if my history is correct, he's one of the guys that was following around the revival trail, and noticed that when they would come in as an evangelist and do a meeting in a town, you know, the bars and everything would empty, and people would come to church, and be mass amounts of conversions, and then the revival would pack up tent and move to a new location, and then they'd come back again in a year or two or three, and no change had been made. Right, so there was no discipleship. There was just an emotional evangelistic appeal, and no follow through, no discipleship. And so he established a method of discipling where they taught Bible. Really, it's kind of a precursor to Sunday school.
Yeah,
became
it was.
Sunday school. But the Methodist Church, really, a lot of it springs out of the John Wesley movement, the Wesleyan Church. So he's significant. In church reformation and church history, he's huge. So I don't know if you didn't know that, but his personal life was one of incredible devotion, particularly in his stewardship. And so, I'm going to call the numbers out the top of my head here, so I might not get
30
exactly
pounds.
right. His first year salary was 30 pounds, which in the 1700s, I don't even know what that was. Doesn't matter, but that was his salary. And he determined for him the cost of living, everything he needed was 28 pounds. So there's not much margin there, but he gives the 2 pounds. And then his salary doubles to 60 pounds, and he determined he didn't need to change his lifestyle. That's the key to his story.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't change his lifestyle. He just gave 30 pounds more. And then he went to 90 pounds, still didn't change his lifestyle. And at the end in life, late in life, he's living simple. He has really, of earthly standards, he has accumulated nothing. Because he dies basically broke financially. But he's earning 1,400 pounds a year. So that's exponentially from where he was in the beginning. But he hadn't changed his lifestyle. He's living on like 30 pounds. That's the part that was really humbling to me. And when we talk about tithing and the significance of, for some people, it's a big sacrifice to do 10% when they're barely getting by.
Yeah.
And you factor in inflation and everything that they purchase, and they probably haven't had a significant raise. So that's a big deal. Right? But to imagine that you stay at that level of living and giving, well, not giving, you're living, but as your income increases, if you're fortunate enough to be blessed in that way, you don't change your lifestyle, but you just give more. Man, that's incredible.
Yeah, I thought that was a very powerful
So he gave
story.
away 30,000 pounds in his life.
That's awesome.
There's a story about Francis Chan, too, when he wrote his first book. He had decided before he sold it, whatever he made from it, he was going to give away. And it ended up being over $1 million or something like that. And people at his church were like, hey, you should invest this and do this. And he's like, yeah, I could do that. And he said, but I already told God I was going to give it all away before I made it. So I'm not going to not do that. And his statement back to one of the guys in his church, he's like, well, as soon as you write a book that makes $1 million, maybe you can tell me how to use my money that way. But, it wasn't an arrogance. It was just saying, I I committed
Yeah.
this to God.
It's falling
I
through.
wrote this because God led me to do it. It's not mine. Like he's the
Maybe-
one.
Maybe these blessings are from God.
And it's crazy, to see God's used, Francis in incredible ways over the years and stuff. And, some people would say, oh, he made so many mistakes because he's thrown away so many opportunities. But it's kind of that John Wesley idea of like, I don't see him pursuing the things of this world,
Depends on what you're investing in.
Right. Yeah. So.
I think for a lot of people, not everybody. I mean, for some people, things are tight. I totally get it. But I think for some people, part of the issue is that there's no plan and no intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we're going to accomplish something at the gym or we're going to do whatever, like we're going to have a plan to make that happen. And I just wonder how many people don't really know where their money really goes.
Yeah. I mean, you got two options. You spend more or less. Maybe you can make more or less. I mean,
Depends on where you work
just
and what you do.
what are you going to do with your stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's why the idea of, yesterday we're talking about giving out of your first. If you make that conscious decision at the beginning of the week or in your budget line, and the very first thing is, I'm going to be generous, then whatever's left I'm going to live on, it totally changes the game from I'm going to live and whatever's left I'm going to give from.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's typically, at least in our house, not a whole lot of margin at the very end. But it's that idea of choosing to trust that God, you're going to provide for me, and I'm going to trust you with this.
Well, I think what resonated with Wesley's story, at least with me, maybe you as well, Andrew, was sometimes we can almost be guilty of, okay, I'm gonna give, and I'll receive this blessing. Now that blessing's for me,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
When the perspective has to be that everything is His,
Mm-hmm.
and so do I trust Him? To me, the most significant thing that and when I was listening and preparing for the message, the most significant thing was when the guy that I was listening to, Rick Atchley from the Hills Church in Fort Worth, Texas, he said, I think we trust God more with our sin and our eternity than we trust Him with our money and tomorrow.
Yeah.
I thought, man, that is so true. Because when somebody dies, they went to heaven. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They were a believer. I'm sure they were a believer, right? They were a believer. They went to heaven.
Yeah.
Everybody's better at your funeral.
Yeah. God's really big in those moments.
Really
Yeah.
big. But day to day, we worry about tomorrow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm guilty of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
I've struggled with that, since I've been an adult. So I, shared the tithing story of Mandy and I, and how I didn't want to tithe, early on in our marriage, and God, changed my heart in that. But yeah, I think it's something that I think if we're honest, all of us struggle with it at some point. Of going, how is that going to work?
Because
Gee, come on.
ultimately, it's like, yeah, this series is about finances, is about money, but it's really not about that.
Yeah.
It's really about trust. Who are you going to trust that will provide for you? Is it yourself
Mm-hmm.
or is it the Lord?
You ever made a bad investment?
Yep.
I don't really do a whole lot of that.
All yours are good?
Well, they're just not that many.
So why does our mind immediately go to money when we talk about investing? I mean, it was kind of set up because we're talking about money, but we make good investments, we make bad investments.
I've made some bad investments into people.
Yes. But good investments, what's our best investment? It's not the one that provides the most financial return.
Mm-hmm.
It's the one that provides eternity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Got a friend that wanted to go into ministry. His dad said, no. You can't go to Bible college. You're not going to make enough money. And reflecting back upon that, we were pretty good friends. And he's a man of faith now. He's pretty involved in his church and such. But what an improper way to measure return. How much money are you going to make? How much life are you going to change?
Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Godliness with contentment is great gain. What do you think of when you hear that statement? Godliness with contentment is great gain.
I think of people that I know that model that. I think of my friend Jose in, Costa Rica. You can't, make him shut up about what God's doing and how he's working in people's lives and yet by the world standards, I wouldn't say Jose has a whole lot. But you talk about, a guy with joy and purpose and contentment. That's what I think of.
Caleb?
I haven't got a thought on that yet. I'm still processing. Read it again.
Godly, you were reading.
AKA Christian version of I wasn't listening.
I was actually reading some scripture to see what you're
He's
pulling.
reading his Bible.
I was. Verse
Oh, did you say something?
yeah.
I'm doing my own study in Romans over here.
What were you reading?
Verse 6.
I was actually towards the end. I was at 17 and 18.
You're really
Of
reading
Romans.
I was. No,
He's already read 5
I'm in-
chapters.
I'm in first. When you commit to a reading plan, you got to take every.
regardless.
Carpe diem, seize the day, baby.
Every free moment.
Matt and I were talking about this yesterday.
This is like sermons that we preach. No one listens.
Yeah.
They just read their Bibles.
No, like
That's a good cover, by the way.
I was reading my
Just-
Bible.
just
Can you
go like that.
restate that?
yeah, if my eyes are closed, it's because I'm praying, not sleeping.
Okay,
Matt and I were talking about this yesterday. This concept in Clay County privately, between some. I don't remember when this came up, but
I don't remember this conversation.
you don't. That's right. Well, not particularly this verse, but what I'm thinking about, like perspective wise, just because of the way I was raised, because of the situation that I was brought up in. Like my family, my dad would give the shirt off his back. Like he'd give everything he had, but he really did recognize like nothing he had was his. Like he made his living from churches like ours that support him on the mission field, and churches like he had tons of churches all over the U.S. And so everything he had, it wasn't like I'm gonna go work more, do this. He could have switched that.
I'm guessing he didn't have a whole lot.
No, but like as a kid, I didn't know we didn't have a whole lot until I started working. Like until I started getting a paycheck, and then
You're like, we were poor.
I was like, oh, I made more than Dad this month, because of some months were. But never ever did we ever go without want. Never ever did we go without food on the table, without bills being paid, and never ever did I see my dad worry about it, ever. And so I have done my best now as a father and adult and provider, like to not worry about it. And really, I don't worry about that many things in life, just because of the example that I saw displayed from both of my mom and my dad through that. And so, like the story that you guys have, I've heard both of you guys about your wives pursuing you to do this, do the tithing, and then as a young age, you're like we just grew up doing it, like all of it. So like for me, like I've been doing that since I was young, just because that's what displayed. Even Dad, like everything he had, it wasn't his anyways. But it went beyond this, and it was just the whole lifestyle. We talked about my life group last night. We talked about what does it mean to be a living sacrifice and give everything you have. Like I can remember Mom and Dad, like we had people that come and stayed with us. And I was telling them as a kid, like, I didn't know who these people were. I'm sure Mom and Dad knew, but like when I say stayed with you, like, yeah, some were 1 or 2 nights, but some were like 2 or 3 months. Mm-hmm. And like,
Same in my house.
who were these people? I don't know, but they became part of our family for 2 or 3 months, as they went through that. But like, it was that lifestyle, like everything we have, like we're going to use it to benefit. So like in my head, and I'm contemplating, but godliness with contentment is the great gain. Like I'm wondering, like, am I passing on that same thing that my dad did to me or to my siblings? Am I passing that on to the next generation? Because obviously they're not living the same way that my parents lived in that way, where like for the most part, like we know where that's coming from. We know what we're doing or going.
It's such a deceptive thing, though, in our world, because you got your paycheck, you still do, because you work.
Yeah.
So you earned it. It's yours.
Kind of, yeah.
but not really.
Yeah.
I think for me, when we talk about like the worry or anxiety or whatever, whatever, it's not about the money. It's about my heart. That's what I have more concern over, because I know who I am deep down, and without Jesus, I'm not a good person. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Well, we think that, yeah.
yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, well, we all ought to at some level, because we're broken.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, I was talking to my wife about this, like in how I even like parent and finances and all this stuff. Apart from Jesus, I do what I want to do and how I want to do it. The only thing that changes that is because I have a relationship with Jesus, and I've practiced walking with Jesus, and he's stayed by my side all these times. That's the only thing that changes, because our flesh desires, I mean, at least me, my flesh desires to do it my way, in my time, and just mow people down. But what changes that is because I have a relationship with Jesus. Now I have to fight against the flesh and follow him. So I think the anxiety is like, I don't want to be the person I know I would be apart from Christ.
I can track with that, and I assume most of you guys could. Like, for me, it's not necessarily and don't get me wrong, like, we live pretty much paycheck to paycheck. That's kind of the stuff it is. But, like, it's not the stuff that worries me. What is, for me, it's control. Like, I want to have control.
Yeah.
And
you have to, like,
look at
sacrifice
any aspect of my life. Like, I want to have control over this situation or that situation. And so it's surrendering. And that's why I think, like, this is way more about, it's way more about money and finances, and even our American mind go to retirement or what that looks like. But to me, it's more like, am I sacrificing, like, my daily decisions, my schedule, my time, that I spend with or without my kids or with my wife or with people? Because, like, to me, like, time is way more essential, I think, and what we do with
You
that.
can get more money, but you can't get time back.
Yeah. And so, like, where are our priorities? And, like, if you sit around and you look at your daily schedule, like, you'll see where your priorities are. And sometimes, many times, it's self-centered.
Yeah.
Focus on me. Sometimes it's not.
That's why I think it's important. Those two are paired together: godliness and contentment, to be great gain.
Yeah.
And I honestly think, as I've contemplated this and was working on the message, the godliness is the key to the contentment. Without godliness, you're not going to find contentment. So walking in partnership with Jesus, that's the source of the contentment. And I went to Philippians chapter 4. Paul says that it's Jesus Christ that can do all things through him. That's out of a contentment discussion. Well, plenty or little, doesn't matter, because he's got the relationship that's firm with Jesus. And so I think talking about money is the wrong entry point. It's godliness. It's a relationship with Christ. Do we trust him or not?
Yep.
And money is just a reflection of that. It's a good way to gauge whether we trust him or not, and how much.
Yeah, your picture of the tenth there, the tithe, that's really good, because it's a word picture.
Yeah.
Even the word tithe is a picture of submission and authority to the one who's in control.
Right.
Our friend, I had a very lengthy discussion with afterwards, and he was just so fired up about that.
Yeah. The 10th.
It's like, you guys get it. You finally get it.
The idea of a 10th.
Well, you told us, but
Putting yourself under the authority and command of God.
Yep.
Because I asked that question, and I asked him, why a 10th? It just seems so random, but nothing's random with God.
No.
Why a 10th? Well, 10 commands of creation. There's 10 commandments of law. You got the creator and sustainer, the one to whom we answer. And it's just a picture of I'm putting myself in submission to him. And so that's why we called it a good starting point, I think, in our discussion.
Yeah.
A good starting point for giving.
Yep.
Definitely not a law. We can talk about that part. I don't think people probably not that interested in that element of this. How much do you give? I don't. Jesus doesn't negate tithing, and he doesn't, remember to tithe. He doesn't repeat that.
I think Matt presented this in a really cool way, I thought, yesterday, but talking about the same line,
you're off. There you go.
But like that 10th of the Old Testament, like it was required of God's people in the Old Testament. But what is God requiring in the New Testament?
Your life.
Yeah.
Everything.
Every aspect.
Yeah.
And so I think when people ask that question, obviously their heart's in the wrong place because it's like, well, I think you used the words the bare minimum. I can't remember exactly what you said, but I thought it was really clear on that picture
Sell everything
of
and
what it
follow me.
looked like. Like, no, I don't want just the 10th of you or a 10th of your life. I want all of you. And I paid the price for it.
Yeah.
And I think maybe the number's not repeated in the New Testament. We've transitioned from law to grace, from law to the Spirit led, and so if you say 10th, then that becomes I check that box.
Yeah.
I've earned some righteousness today. No, that's not how it works. That's what the Pharisees were doing. Jesus actually, when he does talk about a 10th, condemns them because of that. They're checking the box, but there's no transformation in their life. The Spirit's obviously not alive.
Well, they're asking how much do I have to give?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, by their actions.
And it's mentioned mint and dill, which are the two least important things as far as spices that would be tithes.
Talk about legalism.
Yeah,
They're
that's
drawing it
the
up.
heart of that is saying you go down to the smallest thing and yet you miss the biggest biggest part of what it means to follow God. I think the widow's
Widow's
mite
mite.
that we often use, Jesus doesn't rebuke her for it. And I think in our culture we'd say, "Oh, like save your money, don't do that." And Jesus actually like commends her for that.
Or the lavish display of Mary when she pours the nard on Christ.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
because it's all
Priorities.
his, but yeah, it shows where our heart is.
That's enough for today, isn't it? We got to keep talking about this for a month.
It's good.
We better quit.
Yeah, 2 more weeks.
2 more weeks. You heard it here. 2 more weeks. Stewardship. Thanks for listening.